Well, then, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music's free, virtual, informal monthly series called Conversations with Our Curator. I am Melissa Ziobro, the curator and a professor of history at Monmouth University, just 1 mile from the beach in beautiful West Long Branch, New Jersey. Tonight, we are chatting with Caroline Madden about both Boss, the biannual online journal of Springsteen studies, and her book, Springsteen as Soundtrack, the sound of the boss in film and television. But before we dive in to chatting with Caroline, of course, I have to make just a few announcements. And I always apologize to our regulars who hear these same announcements month after month, but we do have some newbies here. So if you are not familiar with the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music, we are Bruce's official repository. And we celebrate the history of American music in all its diversity of artists and genres with our archival collection, our programming, and our exhibits. As a longtime public historian, I very much believe that music is perhaps the most accessible way to learn history, and that learning history is critical to being an informed participant in our great democracy. So you will get off my soapbox, but we at the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music are currently in the midst of planning for a 30,000 square foot facility, which you can see the artist's rendering of behind me. We have broken ground. There's a construction site active on campus, and we plan to open in the spring of 2026, just in time for America's 250th birthday. The new facility will have a roughly 250 seat theater, a small gift shop, and 2 floors of interactive exhibits related to American music history broadly, and of course, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. So you can learn more about us on our social media and at springsteenarchives.org. You can also donate very easily on our website, springsteenarchives.org, if you are so inclined, because we are, of course, a 501c3, and we appreciate your support of our educational endeavors. So I will drop the link also in the chat in a moment, so you have it handy. So thanks for giving me a few minutes to cover a little red tape, but we can now get back to tonight's program. Conversations with Our Curator, as I said, is this free series we've been doing that allows us to get to know researchers, authors who are exploring new perspectives in American music history. I really wanted us to have some programming for people who perhaps couldn't come to campus, right? So that we can continue our educational mission beyond our brick and mortar structure. Often the books are about Bruce, but sometimes they're not. You never know what you're going to get. So you can see the lineup on our website and our socials, as I noted. I will ask Caroline some initial questions, and then we will open the floor to Q&A, at which point you can unmute and ask a question or type it in the chat, and I would be happy to answer it for you. We do try to keep these events to no more than 1 hour, so we will be wrapping up no later than 8 o'clock. Okay, so Caroline, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so let's dive in. Let's start first by chatting about Boss, the biannual online journal of Springsteen studies. What a title. You really nailed it with the title there. How long has the journal been around?
It's been around since 2014, and then I became the managing editor in, I believe, 2019.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes, my background. I went to undergrad at Shenandoah Conservatory, so I began being interested in theater. But I was always also interested in writing as well. So then I attended SCAD in Savannah, and I got my master's in cinema studies, and that's kind of where I started forming my idea for my book. And in terms of Bruce, that's I grew up in New Jersey, and it's just something that was a part of my family. And I grew up listening to him, and I became more interested in him during high school. I read this book called Prozac Nation, and it had a lot of quotes from Bruce's songs. And at that point, I had only really listened, like to the Christmas song, Santa Claus is coming to town, and like things like that when I was younger. And I was like, wow, like his music is so deep. And so that I started listening to more and just kind of, fell in love with his work. And now I, write and read all about him.
Mm. So the journal Boss, it's all online and free, right?
Yeah. Yes. So for those that may not be necessarily like involved with academia, just going to briefly explain, a lot of academic articles are, and part of these journals that you have to pay for if you want to read an individual article. Sometimes it can be $50, perhaps even more. And so you're not able to access or read these articles unless you pay. And of course, if you're researching for something like a book, that you're going to want a lot of articles to read from, and that can add up really quickly. So Boss is free, and anyone can access it at any point in time. And that is part of, we not only want to I guess raise awareness or broaden this idea that Springsteen's work is worthy of academic study, but we also just want fans who may not be necessarily scholars, or writing some sort of project. We want you to be able to read it as well, because there's just so much about Bruce's work that you can you can really dig into and learn about. So it's exciting to read whether you're an academic or not.
I love that. I wish we could find more ways to make scholarly publishing open access. So I really
Yeah.
applaud you and the whole Boss team for making that happen. So just to confirm, you publish rigorously researched, peer-reviewed articles, but the fans should not shy away from checking this journal out.
Yes, exactly. It's the a lot of the articles, while yes, they're dealing with academic subjects or ideas, it's still very, very accessible, very readable, and we just really encourage. So Boss is interdisciplinary, so the writing, can relate to religion or economics or politics, literature. There's so many different, and if you go on the archives on our website, you can see there's just so many different topics and connections that you can draw from.
Now, I was excited to have you this month because you have a new issue coming out pretty soon, right?
Yes, yes. Our issue, I'm putting it together. It will be out in December, and we have a lot of exciting articles that are particularly exciting for myself. About film. One of the films that's being covered, I actually had a chapter about it in my book, but I ended up cutting it. So I'm really excited to see other people drawing attention to this. We're also kind of expanding the different types of things that we review. We're also reviewing a podcast. And so we're very excited. I'm very excited. We're all very excited. I do also want to mention the editors. They are the ones who started Boss. Jonathan Cohen, Roxanne Hard, Erwin Strait. They're all incredible writers in their own rights, and they were the ones who spearheaded this. And I'm very happy to continue it. We also have the editorial advisory board, people like Eric Alterman, Jim Cullen, Donna Love, all these wonderful, amazing Springsteen writers.
Awesome. I just went and dropped the link to the journal in the chat. So if anyone wants to grab that and bookmark it, save you Googling later. And Caroline, let's say we have some authors in the audience. How would folks begin to pitch an idea to you?
Yeah, so so the next issue technically will not be until 2026. Just keep that in mind. But you can email me at springsteenstudies@gmail.com. And or there's on the website, you can just submit an abstract. And if you're not familiar with that, it's just essentially a paragraph or two that kind of distills what your article is about, why it's relevant, and why a venue like Boss should consider publishing it.
Awesome. Awesome. Any last words on Boss before we move into your wonderful book?
I just want to reiterate, please take a look when it comes out in December, and I will be spreading the word, all different Springsteen related websites and venues. I will make sure to get the word out there, and please take a look. Lot of passionate writers, and we just love being able to share this and put this together.
Awesome. I cannot wait to see the next issue. Okay, so moving on to Springsteen as soundtrack, the sound of the boss in film and television. So this book came out in 2020, right?
Yes.
Yes, and the book examines a selection of both films and TV shows from the 80s up through 2020. Tell us a little bit more about the journey to writing this book. You said earlier you were a Springsteen fan, and how lucky are you that this actually became your work?
Yeah, it felt like an epiphany one day. Like I was when I was in grad school, I did a paper, and I'll probably talk about this film a little bit later, about John Sayles' Baby It's You. I saw the movie. It has like 7 Springsteen songs, and it blew me away. And I ended up writing for one of my classes a paper about the soundtrack. And so after I saw that movie, it hit me like a lightning bolt one day. I'm like, I should write about Bruce's songs in the movies, because I'm such a cinephile, and I was in grad school and just loving my cinema studies program. So yeah, that just kind of hit me. And I also there's this user on Backstreets. They had a blog. It's called I'll see if it's still around. It's called Sandler Cruise, like spelled like Tom Cruise, the last name. And that person would post all the different like Springsteen references in film. So I would not even just soundtrack. So I was very familiar with that blog. I had written that paper, and it just kind of all came together. And I was like, yes, I really want to do this.
Now, writing a book is no easy feat, right? Even if you are passionate about this subject, even if you happen
Yes.
to have a lot of information about the subject in your head, you have to get the words on paper, and you have to show your sources, right? So it's a lot of research. Can you talk to us a little bit about your research, which also included the archives, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it was an amazing time. I I was living in New York at the time, so I was able to easily kind of access just things in that area. So I would go to the Performing Arts Library at Lincoln Center. I got to read an early draft of the Prozac Nation film, where I discovered that earlier drafts had more Springsteen references and there was, more depth to it. And I mentioned this in my book. And, that was incredible because where else are you going to get the privilege of seeing this? For the Springsteen Archives, and this was just the little house that you guys have right now.
Yeah.
I spent the entire day. It was a very long day. I didn't get to see much of the fun stuff. I mainly was looking through the like papers from past conferences that the archives used to hold. And so I was mostly looking through papers. I still had to wear like gloves. But it was so much fun. Like I was so excited to be there. And yeah, so it was great to take advantage of those opportunities.
You did get to see some fun stuff when you came back for a later visit, right? And we got to look at like East Street Kings
Yeah.
jerseys and stuff, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, that was exciting.
Your research actually even included interviewing John Landau, right? I mean, what a coup. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I interviewed John Landau, and I interviewed a few other people as well. I tried my best to get as many as I could, but as you can imagine, it can be difficult sometimes. But John Landau, I am so grateful. I So at the time, I was interning at a film distribution company, Kino Lorber, and we had access to just like different databases where we could like find the emails of important people. And so I was able to find the like office email, his like secretary or assistant, and I just went through there and he agreed. I really was not expecting it, and I was so impressed, and just by him taking the time to answer me, but also like it, I did just speak to him via email, but even through just like text, I could the way he answered, like he cares so much about Bruce and is so like um really respects like the art that he makes, and it was just so nice to like see that kind of connection that they have.
Hmm. Speaking of the art that he makes, you quote a director who says Springsteen himself is, quote, the greatest American filmmaker who has yet to make his first film. I'm going to repeat that once for the audience so they can ponder it a little bit. Springsteen is the greatest American filmmaker who has yet to make his first film. You obviously agreed, Caroline, because you quote this and then you want to talk about it. So tell us a little bit about how that resonated with you.
Okay, so there is a lot. If you read a lot of Springsteen books, and these books aren't necessarily just academic. There is such great books out there that are really looking at Bruce's work in depth, and a lot of them look at his connections to literature. A lot of people describe Bruce as a very novelistic writer, and I'm not saying I disagree, but I sort of, in my introduction, am making the case that, Bruce is, I would say, a little more heavily influenced by cinema. And this was something that really developed during his, relationship with John Landau. But not only is Bruce influenced by cinema, but the way that he writes puts these images in your head, and you can see the details that he describes are very visual, and you can almost see his songs playing out in front of you. So that was my approach, and my sort of getting on my soapbox and saying I would say that Bruce is more of a cinematic writer than anything.
Hmm. in the book, you note that you learned Springsteen is very particular about which project he lets use his music. Can you tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it just, in my research that I came up with and in my interviews, it from like filmmakers, and it was, they were all kind of saying the same thing, like how difficult it was to get Bruce to get Bruce's music, particularly after he became big. Like the movie Baby It's You by John Sayles, that came out like before Born in the USA, and after, I think, yes, and so The River was the last thing, and it was a lot easier for John Sayles to get all the music. But if you read about Peter Bogdanovich Mask, um, that there's like a whole behind the scenes thing where he, wasn't able to get the music. I think, the bigger that Bruce became, the more, tied up in legalities. And I think Bruce just wasn't, all of the projects, even if you look on IMDb, like some of the other films that I don't even write about, you can still find these connections, and it makes sense why Bruce allowed his songs to be on screen.
Mm, very interesting. I'm going to do something now that I don't usually do. So, fingers crossed that the tech gods are with us. I want to share screen only because I want to pull up the table of contents for your fabulous book. So, are we seeing the table of contents?
Yes.
Perfect. Look at that. It's my lucky night. Okay, so I thought everyone should get a look at the depth and the breadth of the content that you cover. We certainly will not have time to discuss them all. So we're going to play a little game where Caroline gets to pick three to cover. And then when we move into
Three. Ooh.
Q&A, of course, others can ask questions if they'd like. So Caroline, which one do you want to tell us a little bit about first?
Okay, I might like go in order, and I'm gonna go with Baby It's You,
Okay.
because it's, yes.
Give us maybe a little overview of the film for anyone who hasn't seen it, and then tell us how Bruce's music augments the film.
Okay, so I love this movie very much. So I'm gonna be very excited to talk about this. So Baby It's You is directed by John Sayles, who would go on to direct Bruce's some of Bruce's music videos. So there was that connection there, and John Sayles is from New Jersey, and so anyway, the film is genuinely a Springsteen song come to life. And it has at least like seven, maybe possibly six different Springsteen songs. So essentially, it's about two teenagers in early 60s, Trenton, New Jersey, who, are in love. It's young teenage love. There's an entire scene where they're walking on the boardwalk at Asbury Park. They skip school, they go to Asbury Park. Like, it could not be more perfect. And the interesting thing about the film, it so what I write about is how the music is structured. So the film itself is like two different halves. We see their young love in high school, and then they graduate. The girl goes off to college. The boy is in Miami, and just like working as a waiter. So it's these class differences. She's the daughter of a doctor. He is working class. And then the way that the music is structured, it goes, and this is what I talk about in my chapter. It goes from Greetings from Asbury Park through Darkness. It takes you on the same journey that Springsteen's work takes you on. It takes you from these young, just kind of like E Street Shuffle plays when they're like walking in a bar. It's just this fun, like carefree youth. And then it takes you all the way up into Darkness on the Edge of Town with Adam Raised a Cain, and where the characters are kind of facing adulthood and they've lost some of that romanticism from Born to Run. So it's just like it's a really, really great movie, and I highly, highly recommend it. And I mean, if you love Springsteen, there's so many songs, and he is like, he's like a narrator in some ways.
Our audience might have expected to go home with some new reading today, but they didn't know perhaps they were going to go home with some new movies and TV that they had to watch as well. So everybody's got to go find a copy of Baby It's You if they haven't seen it.
Yeah.
All right. So what would your next pick be? Give us an overview and how Bruce's music augments it.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about In Country. Yes. Okay. So I just want to talk about films that maybe are not as familiar to others, because I was really excited to discover them. So In Country is directed by Norman Jewison, and it's based on a young adult novel about a young girl who her father passed away in Vietnam. So in the book, it takes place in, I think, 84 or 85. So there's a lot more like immediacy with her relationship to Born in the USA. This brings it up to 1989, but there's still that connection to Bruce Springsteen there. So essentially, this teenage girl, she's like 17. She graduates from high school, and she's sad about not knowing her father. And a big part of the book, and kind of a subtle part of the movie, is Bruce Springsteen's music. She also lives with her uncle, who is a Vietnam veteran and is struggling with post-traumatic stress, and she spends the whole film trying to understand veterans and understand why she knows so many that are going through this psychological these psychological troubles, and she uses Bruce Springsteen's music as a way to get into that, and as a way to understand. And I just really I really love the kind of intergenerational themes of this film, and how the Born in the USA album speak to, or the song rather as well, really spoke to those who struggled in Vietnam, or those who the family members, and those who had to be there for them when they returned home.
Incredible. I do love that you're picking these slightly more obscure films. Okay, so you've got one more.
Yes, I'm gonna, and yeah, I'm gonna go with another obscure one. This might be a little harder to find, but let me know and I will help you because it's so good. So this is a film directed by Ed Burns, and he's a great like indie director, and it takes place in Rockaway Beach, but it kind of has those like seaside vibes to it.
Wait, let me pause you. Which one are we doing?
Oh yeah, sorry. No Looking Back.
Okay,
No Looking Back. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. And and there's a lot of there's like Valentine's Day is in this. There's a lot of more like Tunnel of Love songs, more romantic ones. And it's essentially about this guy that returns home Rockaway Beach, and his ex-girlfriend, who's like a waitress in a, you know, Greasy Spoon diner. I mean, hello, like very Springsteen. And he, you know, wants to be with her, but she's engaged to a guy played by Bon Jovi, and Bon Jovi's really good in it.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it's just, there's like this, yeah, Valentine's Day is one of my favorite songs, and like there's like a slow dance scene to it. So what I talk about in my book is the main character is actually the woman who's the waitress. So I use that film and that chapter in my book to talk about Bruce's portrayal of women. A lot of the songs in the movie are kind of, even though it's Bruce in a male voice, it's speaking for her. And it's a lot of more Bruce's relationship songs. So it's a great movie.
Oh my goodness. Well, that time is going too fast as always. I'm going to stop my screen share and ask you one last question before we go to the audience. Of course, time, as I just noted, goes by so quickly, and the book came out in 2020. I have to imagine that there have been new movies or television where
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I could have added that. Can you give us an example or two?
Well, so right when I was publishing, or you know, I was just about to like hand in my book, Blinded by the Light is announced, and then eventually, you know, comes out, and I was like, no. But you know, my but what I'm, to make myself feel better, I like a lot of my book, I wanted to focus on like American stories and American filmmakers. There is one exception, and I'm not saying I highly, you know, I think it's very important to, you know how, you know, international, or you know, people of color, like I that's really important, how they like, you know, listen to Bruce and experience Bruce. I think that's very important. But just for, you know, the sake of narrowing focus, my book was, you know, seeing how American filmmakers interpret, you know, Bruce's vision of America, and uses his music to kind of get that across. So anyway, I was a little upset, you know, about Blinded by the Light, not having it in my book, but I actually think it's fine. I'm starting to think, you know, with all of these films that Bruce is putting out, these documentaries, you know, Road Diary, Western Stars, Letter to You, it's all very much about his own legacy, his own mythology. I think this is going to be even more heightened when Deliver Me From Nowhere comes out. And I really think that could be like a whole other project.
Ooh, awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, let's look at some of the questions in the chat. This one, I'll just kind of make an announcement. Somebody asked why Boss is only published every other year, and Roxanne chimed in and said it's about the quantity of submissions. So it sounds like y'all are open to potentially publishing more frequently in the future if there's enough content. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I defer to my editors as well, because they, you know, a lot of the decision making, but I certainly, I'm sure they would be thrilled with that as well.
Yeah, so our writers here, our academic writers here have got to get cracking. John makes a comment about Bruce's albums being his movies. And yes, John, I think, as you know, you might have stepped away for a second because we were talking about him being the greatest American filmmaker who hasn't yet made a film. So we agree with you completely. Here's a comment from Arlen. Let's see if this is on your radar, Caroline. Surprised you left out Copland from '97.
Yeah.
Its use of stolen car was masterful. Was that on your radar?
Yes. Yes, I was actually just reading that, and I was like, oh, I know, Arlen, I know. I Copland is amazing. and that scene that he's speaking of, beautiful. Sylvester Stallone, yeah, it's really great. It's very romantic. But anyway, there was quite a few chapters that I cut. I was also going to write about Indian Runner, even though technically it's only based on
Right.
a song. But I what I was trying to do with each chapter was have it be about a specific theme in his work. And I had, so No Looking Back was kind of already that relationship movie. And for me, it had a lot more Bruce songs. So that was the only reason. Yeah, but that's another great one.
It always pains us as authors when we have to leave anything out, right? You don't want to leave anything
Yeah.
out, but you've got limits. And
Yeah, I like with this book, I could have easily like made it to where I'm like covering so many different but like making it like short, the actual chapters or entries shorter. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to take you like scene by scene and really like dig into what the lyrics were communicating, what the visuals were communicating. But yes, it was painful to leave that behind.
this is a bit of a longer question. I don't know if you also want to look in the chat, Caroline, if that will help you, but it says,
I have it out.
Okay, I think Ira Glass, This American Life, once said something like audio is the most visual medium. So I guess I wonder if musicians and songwriters like Bruce Springsteen might hesitate to share their music for films where their music may take on like a new specific meaning that they didn't initially intend when they created it. But then again, maybe that's music's beauty, having and holding multiple meanings. Did any of this come up for you in your work?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'm trying to think how to answer without like going into a huge monologue and rambling forever. Yeah, I totally understand, because if you're an artist and you're letting a director use your music, like you don't know exactly how it's going to be used. I mean, you may have an idea what the scene is about, but like the actual like structure of it or the visuals, I, I can see how if you're a creative person that might be like a little scary. I so part of the reason why I'm very interested in like soundtracks and film as a whole, because a lot of like film critics or film scholars, like a lot of what you concentrate on, and obviously this makes sense, is the visuals, what we also call the mise en scène. So that's anything that you see on the screen. Why did they choose to, make these, very stark shadows, or, why did they choose to, have the framing in this way where the person's like far, far away, like things like that. That's a lot of what writers or critics discuss about sound. But sound is another entire layer of film that that I think a lot of people overlook. And what I was trying to get across in my chapters was like how so much of Bruce's music like mostly serves to like elevate or make you understand where either like the themes of the scene or where the characters are coming from. So I guess an example that comes up for me is the ending of season 1 in The Sopranos, that where State Trooper starts playing, and they're in Vesuvius. It's like darkly lit, with the candles, and you just hear that dun, 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 and it's got that mystery. And the song itself is about always kind of looking over your shoulder, being afraid that you're going to get caught. And that's exactly how Tony feels. And so it just creates an entirely, like, imagine that scene without the song. It would not have the same mood or the same feeling. It wouldn't really get you into how Tony is feeling. So I don't know. It's just things like that. I just love the different meanings and layers, you know, music wise or even just lyric wise. Sometimes it sounds like the lyrics sound like someone is it sounds like their thoughts. And it's amazing to me that two different pieces of art that were completely separate are put together and it creates this like gorgeous emotional type of you know, reaction in
It's
you.
unreal.
So yeah, exactly. So I love it.
I love it, Caroline.
Great questioning.
Your passion is so pure. I love it.
Thank you.
So here's another question. How would you describe Bruce's relationship with visual mediums? So film, live performance, music videos, even album covers, and how have his
Oh my
views
God.
evolved? In past interviews, he's mentioned his dislike for music videos, for example, comparing it to putting a mustache on the Mona Lisa. And he has often emphasized his connection to a bar band tradition without an elaborate stage show or too many frills.
Oh man. That's so good. um how do I describe visual medium? I mean, I don't know, because it's like I think of like the cover to the Nebraska album and like how like perfect that was. Um, or his, you know, butt on Born in the USA. Like it still fits. I yeah, like I the music videos are interesting because it was, you know, so prevalent in the 80s.
You had to get on board, whether you liked it or not.
You exactly, that's exactly what I was gonna say. But I mean, I don't um I think I think he I think he learned that there there was a way that you could still maybe experiment with, you know, form and style. I mean, I think like his video for I'm on Fire, which, you know, directed by John Sayles, who directed Baby It's You. Um, you know, that feels like a movie in itself. And you know, we've learned in his you know, autobiography, like just how much like different films influenced him. Like I, you know, I see set pictures from Deliver Me from Nowhere. There's going to be a whole scene where he goes and sees The Night of the Hunter. So like I think um yeah, I just think he discover the, you know, storytelling potentialities that could be in the music video as well, and it didn't just have to be like cheesiness.
Yeah, like almost like he was initially uncomfortable with the contrived visuals, but then found a way to make it work for
Yeah,
him, right? In a way that
yeah,
felt authentic.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Here's another surprised you left out. Surprised you left out
Oh
Limbo,
no.
which has Lift Me Up in its end credits. Was that one on your radar?
Okay, yes, I was gonna have a chapter on Limbo, but Lift Me Up is also in Show Me a Hero, so I still got to write about that amazing song. And again, like as I was saying before, I each chapter was kind of like each chapter was not only a film but connected to a really big theme in Bruce's work. So in country, Vietnam, the, you know, Vietnam War, all of that. You know, Reign Over Me, it's about a 9/11 widower. I got to talk about, you know, a lot about the rising. Show Me a Hero was about you know, housing crisis, and for that I got to discuss, you know, Bruce's attention to like racial politics, so and so on and so on. So I kind of had to like match. And yeah, no, Limbo is an incredible film, but again, it just wasn't the themes itself, and only the end credits, it only being an end credit song makes it a little difficult. I do want to briefly mention The Wrestler. Yes, that is an end credit song, but I found so many similarities from Bruce's story to the main character in The Wrestler, someone that puts their 100% into everything and values, at one point in their life, value their art more than their having a family life or having. So there is that relationship with it.
This is not so much a question, but a comment from John, and I want to see your reaction, Caroline. I barely remember the details of Jerry Maguire, but I remember how Secret Garden stole the show.
100%. I completely agree. Again, this is again like running into that idea of like I mean, I'm sure I can find plenty of connections. It's a great film, but for me, I felt the studying Bruce's like romantic relationships and using that was suited a lot better for No Looking Back. But the Secret Garden sequence is beautiful. I love it.
And Caroline, I'm scrolling endlessly in the chat here. Maybe you can just help me. What was the email address again? Was it springsteenstudies@gmail.com?
Yes, I'm going to type it right now.
Right. It's in there somewhere up in the chat, but it's gotten buried. Okay. How about the one-off Streets of Fire with music by Eddie and the Cruisers that was kind of a knockoff on Bruce's music?
Yes. I know there's a lot of history with that. I think I talk about it in my intro. I mean, again, like my book was really just concentrating on like that's the thing, like this is such a rich topic. Like I mean there's so many different avenues that you can go with it, but for me I was just like I want to do like close readings and talk about the scenes themselves, talk like every chapter that I wrote, I like looked at the scenes themselves and how the songs were used, and then I stepped back and looked at the bigger picture. How does this relate to Bruce's music as a whole? So that's kind of what I did. And yeah, like Streets of Fire, yes, there would be a lot to talk about, but again, I was doing sort of close readings and being like, these lyrics are expressing this about this character, or this is how they're editing the shots to match the tempo of Bruce's songs, things like that.
There might also be a space for someone to do like an encyclopedia type book where it's just 500 word entries on every single instance, that you can find.
Yeah, that was something I thought about as well, but it's like I think that's great, but I just really wanted to go a little deeper.
No, just two different ways of tackling
it. I
like
there's a lot.
This question is so different, so I want to make sure we make time for it. Caroline asks, any tips for someone who's accessing an amazing archive? How do you not get overwhelmed and distracted? So like a
oh my gosh
methods question.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, honestly, like is accessing info. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, well, if you're actually like writing something, then you really have to, write down what you're looking for and make sure that you hit all the points that you really want to hit. But there's also excitement in, finding something new or, but I really think, I really think just making sure you're like sticking to or writing down and like sticking to what you definitely know like that you need to see, and make sure that you're hitting those points. Or just schedule several days.
Oh my gosh. Great, very active chat tonight. A+ class for our class participation. Everybody's doing a great job in there. Here is a question from Jennifer. Caroline, is there one specific movie scene with a Springsteen song that you hold dear as a favorite or find to be the most poignant?
Oh my gosh. Hold on, I need to.
That's really hard. That's like picking your favorite child. Like you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. Okay. This is so hard. I mean, Baby It's You is so good. I think, hold on. I think, oh gosh, this is so hard. You're killing me with this.
You would pick
Um,
a favorite one today and then probably pick a different
yeah,
favorite one tomorrow and the next day.
I know. You know what? I'm gonna say from Baby It's You, they play She's the One during a scene where the guy is like robbing a tuxedo shop because he's kicked out of prom, and they play She's the One, and it just gets you like so hyped up. Like it's like a car chase scene with the cops, and it really I mean, She's the One, that already gets you revved up enough, but when you play it against the scene, um it you just feel that excitement of and you're seeing on screen those teenagers like they're in those like old like 1950s cars, like it's Born to Run put on screen, and it's amazing to see.
Oh, like I said, everybody's got a lot of reading and a lot of viewing to do in the next
Yeah,
couple of weeks. A lot of homework for class today.
yeah.
I think I have gone through most of the questions in the chat. Is there anyone else in the last couple of minutes we have who wanted to unmute and ask a question? Now's your time. If you want to unmute, you can just go ahead and shout out. I have too many little boxes to see. Oh, I do see John Barry raising his hand. Go ahead, John.
This is kind of a broad question I put in the chat, but you have positioned yourself for such a unique perspective on Bruce, singular, in just one or two lines with a headline. Who is this guy, in your opinion, through your lens?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean that um um that's so, yeah, no,
You know
it's
what?
it's
If you
so
don't have
hard
an answer, that makes perfect sense too, because I could talk
no
for three
it,
hours.
Wait, can I answer that question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so all I would say is the greatest rock and roll movie I think ever made that was true to what rock and roll is about was Quadrophenia, based on.
Agreed.
I always thought when I saw that movie that there should be a Bruce version of that because Bruce's life story himself is the rock and roll story. That he was a kid without nothing until rock and roll came into his life, and he became the rock and roll promise delivered. His life story, how he's reached the mountaintop and didn't crack up, didn't lose it, didn't fall apart, even though he went through his trials, and he's still with us. Bruce Springsteen's story is the greatest American rock and roll story, but a story of his life could be made like Quadrophenia if somebody would make that.
I would say that Bruce's life is a movie, and he invites us all to step in and be extras.
Yeah.
And through him, we see the same promise we get when I see It's a Wonderful Life, which is my favorite movie. It's hope. It's what the cinema has done since it was born. It gives this country hope and promise and inspiration. And who sums up those three words better than Bruce Springsteen?
And I think what this new movie, Deliver Me from Nowhere, is going to show people is just one segment of Bruce's life, the Nebraska born in the USA era. My point is his whole life is a cinematic story of rock and roll itself and
Agreed.
how it turned a man into the man who saved rock and roll. You know, Quincy Jones, he just may rest in peace. He had a great quote that I just heard for the first time 6 months ago. He said, if it wasn't for Bruce Springsteen, disco would have won. Think about what that means. That is the story of Bruce Springsteen, the man who saved rock and roll.
Well, Caroline, we got to give you the last word on this. Did you want to have any final closing remarks on this very deep philosophical question? Who is Bruce Springsteen?
I can say that for myself, I what I admire about Bruce so much, and what I take away from him is his dedication and the way that he committed so and dedicated himself so much to rock and roll. And I use that in my own work, like just being dedicated. I worked on this book like every day, and so that's what I take away from Bruce and why I admire him so much. I am also very excited for Deliver Me From Nowhere. It seems like it's also going to touch on Bruce's childhood. I'm really excited for the film because it is going to give us this window into Bruce's life that yes, we could read about, but I think seeing it visually is going to be an amazing experience for fans. And I know that he's like closely working with the filmmakers, so I personally am very excited for it.
Yeah, a few things I would say. The filmmakers have been in the archives a lot too, so always happy to have them and to support in any way we can. Of course, Warren Zanes did a past conversation. I just dropped the link to all of the past episodes of Conversations with Our Curator in the chat there for anybody who might have missed it. You can go get caught up. And we look forward to many more of these conversations in the future. So Caroline, thank you so much.
Thank
Again,
you.
we had a very active class today and you handled it spectacularly. So
thank you.
everybody's got to go out and get that book, get Caroline's great book, and make sure you stay tuned for the upcoming issue of the biannual online journal of Springsteen Studies.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Thank you,
Caroline,
Daniel.
any last remarks before we dismiss the class?
Yeah, I mean, it's like $15 on Amazon right now, so definitely scoop up that deal. And yeah, Boss will be out towards the end of December after the holidays. So I really hope you can take a look, and thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Again, please keep in touch. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and our website is springsteenarchives.org. We hope you see you at future virtual and in-person events. Have a great night.
Good night. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.